She's like, take this in because this is one of the last moments of silence that you will experience for the next few years of your life.
Please welcome Bachelor Clayton Echard.
Bachelor now, Clayton Echard, there he is!
Wow, I like your smile. Congratulations. The world now knows. We just found out less than 24 hours ago. How does that sound? You are the new Bachelor.
Hey guys, and welcome to Millionaire Brand Creation. I am super excited to have very renowned guest, someone that I think is going to share some amazing life experience with you guys, and more importantly, share the things that we all kind of struggle with, but we don't necessarily talk about. So without further ado, the Bachelor, Mr. Clayton Echard. How are you, buddy?
Man, I'm doing great, dude. Well, we should say former, because now
former Bachelor.
I'm like not even the newest one at this point. So now I'm doing great, man. And I'm excited for this conversation. I wish we would have recorded the last conversation we had, but I'm sure we'll regurgitate a lot of the same good things that we were talking about.
So your book, 180 Degrees, is really fantastic. And we'll touch upon that because one of the things I wanted to touch upon briefly, which really resonated with me, was the story you brought into your book with Kevin Briggs and the Golden Gate Bridge dynamic. Can you talk briefly about that to the audience and what that means to you?
Yeah, I believe I saw a TED Talk once. I was just, clicking on YouTube videos, and Kevin Briggs popped up, and I was listening to his story. He's a retired highway patrol officer that patrolled the Golden Gate Bridge around that area. And he was responsible for saving over, I believe it was 200 people, if I remember correctly. And these were complete strangers. And the way that he did it was he just sat there and he listened to them talk, and they felt seen and understood and heard. And that was what it took. And this guy, prior to meeting them, was a complete stranger. So I thought that was really powerful. And I talk about that in the book because I want people to understand the importance of a stranger has the power to change a life. So what can you change? Maybe you can change a friend or family's life. I mean, you don't have to have some incredible insight. Sometimes you just got to sit there and be present and just pay attention and show that person that you care. And that can help save someone's life, or maybe not as drastic, but it can just help somebody start to go down the correct path, and feel like, hey, I'm not alone in this and I can create change. And that was really why I shared that story, is because my mental health journey, there were so many times where if I'd just had one person that had been there in my corner, it could have saved me a lot of pain. But that's all it took. Is I was expecting, well, I need to make all these massive changes. And in reality, all you really need is one person at the right time that's there for you. And you never know where it can come from. So I think sharing that story is powerful because anybody can be a Kevin Briggs, and sit there and listen to somebody. And we might not know it, but we may in the future, or already have, saved some individuals from going down a very dark path just by our presence alone.
No, I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I think, and many times in your book, you talk about your presence, right? What's your life journey? What are you destined to be? And it's funny because when we sat down and talked for the first time, I almost felt like I knew you forever, because it's similar, the dynamics that you go through, right? I mean, you had what? 1% of the world saw you on television, right? And they're thinking, this guy lives this lavish life. He's a stud. He played for the Seahawks. He did all these things. He must have lived an unbelievable life. But in reality, which I love, the behind the scenes of your book really details body dysmorphia, issues with self-talk. Girls didn't like you in middle school and high school. All these things that as guys we go through, and we almost try to create this story for ourselves, right? This success quadrant, this story that people are attracted to reaffirm ourselves that we are successful. And there was one guy, I remember reading your book, that you didn't really listen to, and then you did. And that was, I believe, in high school, which was your coach, Pat Ivy, the Men for Men construct.
That was college. Yeah, I was a part of the player development program. And that from when I first walked in, I was 18 years old, and he starts talking about mindset right out the gate. And I just thought it was dumb. I mean, I thought, well, this is going to make me a better athlete if I believe in myself. I mean, truthfully, deep down, I didn't believe in myself at that point. But I figured if I want to be a better athlete, I got to get bigger, faster, stronger. Like that's how it is. There is no mental side of it that's going to all of a sudden make me catch a pass a little bit better, or make, be a little bit more bold on the field. But the fact of the matter is that's exactly what that mindset does. You take chances. And you believe when every ball is thrown at you, I'm going to catch this ball. And you believe every person that's in front of you, I was a tight end. I would have believed if I was confident, I'm going to block you and I'm going to win. I would play, the first round draft picks every single week. And whenever we would play a first round draft pick from an SEC team, whether it was like Jadeveon Clowney, Myles Garrett, gosh, there's so many other guys that like half of my team, the defensive linemen were all, first round or second round draft picks when I was there. But it was, what I realized was I would walk up to them and I would go, oh my gosh, that's, Myles Garrett, that's Jadeveon Clowney. I'd already lost that battle before the ball was even snapped, because I was thinking, this guy's a first round talent. Like, he's probably going to make me look stupid. That was the mindset that was going on in my head. And so sure enough, the ball snapped. I just get absolutely obliterated, but it wasn't, they were great athletes, but I had already lost the battle in my head. And so Coach Ivey, I finally figured it out my senior year. It took me 5 years. So I had 5 years with eligibility. But what happened is I was actually a better athlete my junior year. I was bigger, stronger, and faster. I ended up pulling my hamstrings, pulled my pec muscles. And so I lost strength, I lost speed, and I lost maybe 5 or 10 pounds. But my senior year, I finally thought, man, this guy has been preaching this for 5 years straight. There's got to be something here. Because, why would you continue to talk about something that doesn't work? And so I just finally was like, you know what, fine, I'm going to start doing these things, practicing positive self-talk. And then as I started doing that, I had I played very well my senior season. If I would have had all the same speed and size from the previous year and strength, I would have been even better, but I was a better athlete just with the mentality alone. But that was something where the reason why I fought it or chose not to, listen to him or take it to heart was because I didn't believe it. Growing up, we didn't talk about, like, it was like, if you felt bad, go hit somebody, like, on the football field. It wasn't like violence, like go swing on somebody out of nowhere and in the classroom. But it was just like, oh, if you're hurting or whatever, go work out or go, hit somebody in football or whatever. But we didn't talk about our feelings. We didn't talk about the mindset. So it was foreign to me. And of course, since it was foreign, that unknown factor I didn't like. It was uncomfortable. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And so I just avoided it. So that was, thankfully, 5 years in, I was my coach. And I also developed a relationship with him. I really liked him. I trusted him as a coach. I loved him to death. I thought he was he was very impactful, and I could tell he one of the best in his athletes. And that's when I thought, well, if this guy's incredible, so maybe I should start listening to more of his words. And it was one of the better decisions I made.
So you made a transition, obviously. You had success your last year. You had a dream. And then May 2016 happens. Tell us what happened then in your life and how that changed your life.
And see, this is where I've done a lot of self-reflection since, but coming from, I played college ball. Walking on the team was already surprising enough, that I actually made it. I didn't think I was going to. Then I got a scholarship, and then I was like, I had the opportunity to go to the next level. And I remember I was in disbelief because leading up to that point, coaches were coming from the NFL to watch our practice. And I remember my tight end coach was like, Clayton, they're coming, not just, they're coming for other guys, but like there's 5 or 6 of them that are looking at you. And I remember just being like, oh, what? Like, and I thought, oh, that's cool. And I brushed it off because I didn't want to like act super excited. But in reality, I was like, oh my gosh, like I actually have scouts that are watching me. Then, it was a build up. And then I remember I got called by like 5 teams leading up to draft day. And 3 of them were seriously considering drafting me. But you talk about how like there's such few spots with so many people. Draft day came around, nobody ended up picking me. I ended up bawling my eyes out because I had these expectations of like, I'm going to be drafted in the NFL. And so they weren't met. And all of a sudden, it comes crashing down. Well, I ended up getting a shot to do a tryout, and it was just a shock. Complete shock to me. And I went in there, end up getting cut. Or like they didn't sign me in those 3 days at mini camp, but then they brought me back in June when I had a job in medical sales. And I was just like, well, this is what I've been training for my entire life. I've been playing football since 7th grade. So why don't I take this leap of faith? And it was kind of scary because, my agent called me and he was like, hey, do you want to play for the Seahawks? And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. He's like, well, let's get you on a plane then. I was like, when? He goes, in like 2 hours. And I'm like, hey, dude, I got a job. Like, so what am I? He goes, okay. He's like, do you want to play in the NFL or not? I was like, I do. He goes, well, then hop on this plane. He's like, and we'll figure out the rest later. I jumped on this plane and it didn't hit me until midway through the flight. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to Seattle right now. Like, I'm going to have to talk to my boss and tell them, and a rush of emotions. But I'm glad I took that leap of faith. And I think sometimes people, there's a lot of times in my life where I did play it safe. That was one time when I didn't. And I'm grateful that I did, because I learned so much in those 2 months that I was there at the Seahawks. But man, it was scary to have to make that phone call. And again, you want to talk about expectations. I expected my coach or my boss to blow up on me. I was just waiting for him to start screaming at me on the other end of the phone. And he ended up just being like, Clayton, I hope I never see you again, because if I do see you again, that means you didn't make it.
That's right.
So I wish you nothing but the best. And I had stressed about that phone call for a good few hours before I made it. And then that was one of many life lessons when I realized I should just be present and not, project into the future, because I thought he was going to scream at me, and I got so stressed out by all these different scenarios, and then it didn't even happen. Nothing close.
In your book, you had a great quote that I've read hundreds of millions of times. It was serendipitous that you used. It was just Henry Ford's quote: "You believe you can, you can. You believe you can't, you can't."
Yeah.
And that actual variation of that quote is in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Because the biggest belief starts in here, right? Without this, none of this manifests and becomes reality. So I'm really glad that you touched upon that.
Mhm.
And then how do you go? Obviously, you talked about it in your book, but the audience doesn't know about it. How did you go from the Seattle Seahawks, having that dream, having to hang up your cleats, and now you're thrown into the world of television and you're on The Bachelorette?
Yeah, so I was cut in 2016. I had another opportunity 6 months later from the Panthers. I'll never forget it. It kind of almost made me sick to my stomach that this is when I was playing it safe. They called me and I said, well, I have a job. I'm still the same company. I can't leave twice. And this is where it's so important that you just, instead of making assumptions, you just go figure it out. I ended up saying, well, I feel like my boss will let me go if I leave a second time. So I said no to the opportunity. 2 weeks later, my general manager comes into town and he goes, "Hey, Clayton, if the NFL ever comes calling again, like, we'll fully support you. Like, we really want you. Like that doesn't come around often. So we fully support you." And I was sick to my stomach, and I thought, okay, I am going to start asking questions and talking to people instead of just making assumptions, because that one stuck me. But regardless, they said that, and I just let it go. I didn't bring it up, and so I worked my medical job. So I did medical sales for 5 years, and on the 5th year, I was 28 years old, and I was in a college town the same college town I graduated from, Mizzou, and I just felt like I was stagnant in my life. I was complacent. I wasn't really happy or sad. But I just remember my 28th birthday hit that year in April, and I just remember thinking, like, this is my life. My path was already right there in front of me. My boss, my senior rep, was he's like in his 50s. He was going to retire in a few years. I was going to take over the position, and I basically saw my entire life played out right there in Columbia, Missouri, and I panicked. I was like, this is not what I want. Like, I feel like there's more to life for me than this. And I also just, like, at the time wasn't too happy with like a couple things in that work environment. So I started looking for a job elsewhere, and basically had a job offer in my inbox ready to go. I talked to my boss, and he says, listen, he goes, that opportunity isn't what you think it is. Sure enough, he goes, call them again and talk to those individuals. I did. They had kind of withheld some information, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, you guys didn't tell me any of this. So I ended up declining that offer. Well, now my company was like, are you leaving or not? Like, we're going to have to fill your spot. Like, it seems like you're trying to leave. All the while, a recruiter reached out in my DMs. They slid in my DMs on Instagram. And mind you, again, timing's everything. It blows my mind. But I just downloaded Instagram about 2 months prior, because I just was like, everyone was getting off Facebook. All my friends were like going to Instagram. So I was like, I guess I have to get an Instagram. And a recruiter found me on a hashtag. I had hashtag fitness.
Wow.
Like on one of my, like, it was like my second or third post, because I liked fitness and I thought about like going the fitness route and training. So I did a fitness post. They found me on that, and then they started, they hopped into my DMs, and I just thought, well, my current company is about to let me go potentially. So, while the ground is shaking underneath me, I might as well make the jump to reality TV. Why not? I mean, worst case scenario, I go on there, I hate it, and I leave. Right. So I just kept interviewing with them. I thought they would fall off, and eventually they're like, hey, we want to bring you on. And I was just like, okay, well, might as well. I said, if not, like, I guess things could be worse. So I took the leap, and then, I went from the Bachelorette to the Bachelor. It's pretty crazy how I was very close to not actually taking that not answering that DM. I mean, I
So
almost
you're
did.
on the Bachelorette, right? And then you got I didn't even see that. Did you get voted off like sixth to last or something like that? Is that how it worked?
I was like, yeah, there was 8 guys left when I was the 8th guy. Like there was
Yeah.
8 dudes finally, and I was the 8th dude to get sent home.
Sent home.
Yeah, and so yeah, basically I got sent home from that point, and then they asked me if I wanted to be the Bachelor, and
Tell us about that moment, because I know everyone watching, girls and guys, is like, how do you feel? What happens when you get told that? Because I mean, that's like a lottery ticket coming true from someone that watches the show, right?
yeah, so like my mom had always watched it growing up, so I knew obviously of the show. I didn't really watch a ton of reality TV, but obviously going through the experience and then all of a sudden being asked like, do you want to be the Bachelor? I think when they asked me, I had to take a seat. I sat down just because I was like, it's like that's a pretty big deal, I mean, like it's like there was 26 other bachelors or 25 other bachelors besides me prior to that point, so not many people in the world had been in that position. So I just remember like getting hit all of a sudden with this information, and I was just like, is this real? And but I didn't have to think long. I legitimately just looked at him. I said, yeah, let's do this, because I was like, why not? I'm like, this is going to be the opportunity of a lifetime. And I saw these great guys that they brought in for Michelle, and I was one of the guys. And I thought, well, I bet you they can bring in a lot of great women, because I respect a lot of these men that they brought in. So I thought this is going to be incredible, and I'll surely find somebody that I want to date, if not, and get engaged to at the end of it all. So I didn't think long about it. I think they told me, and I said yes within like, I don't even know, 10 seconds.
So how does your life change? Because obviously with ABC, they do a huge media blitz behind you, right? They put you on Jimmy Kimmel, they put you on Drew, they get you, I would assume they have stylists, they have makeup artists, they have everybody like dissect your life to become the sexiest man in the world for that year, right?
Yeah.
What was that like? What did they do? How did your life change?
Oh gosh, I think I referenced it in the book, but there was a point where right before it was going to get publicized that I was the Bachelor, I was sitting in my house at my parents' house with a couple of the producers were there with me because we were filming my intro package in St. Louis, and so one of them looks at me and she said, you hear this? And I was like, what? She's like, the silence. And I was like, yeah. She's like, take this in, because this is like one of the last moments of silence that you will experience for the next few years of your life.
Wow.
And I remember when she said that, I just thought like, oh, that surely can't be true. Like there's gotta be, I'm going to have like peace and quiet. And she couldn't be more right. Like my life was flipped upside down. It was publicized, thrown out on the internet within like 10 minutes or less, 5 minutes probably. My phone starts dinging. I mean, like message after text message after text message. All of a sudden, like I'm getting a bunch of people following me on Instagram, because at the time, I think I had 1,900 followers. And then, fast forward 3 months later, I have 315,000. So your life changes because you go from being some person that grew up in a small town of like, it was Eureka, Missouri. It wasn't super small, but 10,000 people, maybe being known by a couple thousand, to then all of a sudden being known by 6 or 7 million people that watch the show. And so it's a massive, it's a lot. It's just a lot to take in. And next thing you know, everything I'm doing, everything's under a microscope. I come off the show, I'm out in public, people are snapping photos, but from afar, like almost like as if I'm like an animal, like from afar, like people are like, I see them, I'm like, just come up and say hello. Right. But I talked to a few people that are celebrities and athletes, and they're like, I feel like a zoo animal. And it's like, no, I get that. That's how I kind of feel sometimes, because people will just like, they'll just do one of these things, like, well, they'll act like they're not, and they'll snap a picture, and you're like, I'm standing right next to them. I'm like, hey, do you want to? Like, oh, I don't want to bother you, but it's like you feel almost like you're not human at points, because, and that's foreign to me, because nobody's ever given me that reaction, and all of a sudden now you're getting that type of treatment, and yeah, like that happened to me by a couple of attractive women that I was like, this is really weird. That like very attractive women like can't even get out a word because they're like panicking, and it just stuff like that happened a lot, where I was like, this is weird. This doesn't feel right. I feel like the same guy that I was before I went on the show. And I kind of maintained the same mentality, but I didn't realize that, like, no, people look at you differently, man. Like your life is not what it used to be, and it will never be that ever again.
And you mentioned that in the book, and I think it's real interesting because basically overnight, I mean, you're just catapulted on the A-list for that 6 month to a year time period. Like anyone that watches the show knows who you are, right? but you're the same guy. Like you haven't changed, nothing's changed. But I would assume your mind has a hard time catching up and dealing with that because now you're protective. You don't know who likes you for you. You don't know who's trying to angle their way to get something. How do you cope with that? How do you deal with that with the audience?
Oh man. Well, again, I was in disbelief at first, or in denial. Maybe I just went. The show ended. I went back to my regular life. I remember like I started a business, my LLC, and I didn't try to like cover it up my address. I just posted it for like and so my address went online, my phone number went online. I was just naive, and I just thought like, oh, like like I can go back and who's going to go search this? Well, people did search it, and I was getting phone calls. And, then I was like, well, what if people show up to my house? Then I started getting paranoid. I would see, then you start to realize because you get people like creepy messages, people saying like, I want to be with you. And next, I remember there was a time where I was in Virginia Beach with my ex, and there was a truck that was like parked outside. And the second I got out my car, it started like slowly driving toward me. I was paranoid nonstop because your life changes, because I went from like walking around in public and no one looking at me to like everybody looking at me as if like I had something on my face. That's what I would describe it as, like some giant strobe light, and everyone's looking at you, and you're just like, I started getting really bad social anxiety. And when I went out in public, like I couldn't even hang out with friends for a period of time. I would go to a bar and I would get, take 100 photos and have like 100 conversations. And I would get so much anxiety that I would look at my friends, like, I got to leave. And I just run out. So how did I handle it? I mean, I just kind of like had no choice but to like just be thrown in there and learn as I go, or as I went. That was about all I could do, because for a while I would like hide because I didn't get the, some people didn't really like me from the show. So I got a lot of negative messages and kill yourself comments and people threatening me. And so there was a period of time for a couple months where I was in Scottsdale where I just like didn't leave my room besides to go get food and to work out. And then I would go straight back and then stay in my room and lay there because I didn't want to be seen. Because like to me, everybody that looked at me was judging me in my eyes. Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah. So it's just weird when you go from like no one really looking at you to like everybody staring at you. It's like if you've seen the movie Inception.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. It must be that.
Yeah. So, the part of the movie where like all of a sudden, like the dream, like the people in the dream realize that like they've infiltrated the dream, and they all turn and look at them. That's a perfect depiction of what it feels like to like come off a TV show. That's what it feels like. It's a discomfort. Like I just want to walk around in life without people staring at me. And it's died down now, but it's really hard to adjust to, because it's like, it's not like a slow, steady transition. It's just like no one knows you, everybody knows you, and now everyone's staring at you. So like it's hard to adjust.
Well, in your book, which I recommend everyone read, by the way, because it talks about the behind the scenes, right? There was a TED Talk I watched the other day. In fact, I'm trying to actually prepare for a TED Talk myself. So fingers crossed. I hope that works out, on relationships. And they did a Harvard study, one of the longest studies, over 70 years, and it talked about what made someone successful in life. And in this study, the guy who is now, it's been going on for 4 generations, right? So really elongated study, over 70, 80 years. And they talked about the most important thing in life is relationships and being in a situation where you're engrossed in your community, right? You're connecting with people. You have that commonality trait. I know based on our conversations, we share that. Our life purpose is to help elevate other people, help inspire other people, help get other people to the highest level that they can attain, right? That's the best level that we can attain. But the irony in this study is what they talked about. They said the 2 biggest things everyone dreams of that they believe will bring them ultimate happiness won't. And they'll usually be their demise. One is, I want to be rich, which, what does that mean, right? Because technically, right, I'm rich, but I don't feel rich, right? Or the second one is fame, right? You're famous, even though you probably don't necessarily feel it. But did those 2 things really change the trajectory and the quality of your life? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. But no one knows that until they've done it, right? And then once they've done it, they realize, wait a second, I got to revert back to people. I got to revert back to my family, my friends, my journey, my purpose. Can you touch upon that and what that relates to you and means to you?
Oh man, yeah, I love that because there's so much. I've had this like these have been the thoughts that have been running through my mind as of recently. There was a point in my life where I always wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to be, I wanted to have a purpose, right? But I thought that purpose meant like, oh, I'm going to make a ton of money in the NFL, or that I'm going to go on The Bachelor and then make a ton of money off of brand deals, and then I'm going to have all this fame, and it's going to open up all these doors, and it does. It opens up a ton of doors. You get a lot of backstage passes, treatment, like all these crazy events. But what ends up happening is like you just crave more and more and more, and you just want the upper. Now you want, it's like I remember when I started making money, I went from like I had a Pontiac Vibe, then I wanted to look at a BMW, then a Mercedes. It's like then you want to go eventually and look at a Lambo, and then like what's beyond a Lambo? It's like you just keep climbing, and it's like I need more, I need more, I need more. And I think it's due to like dopamine, like the release in our body, that feel good hormone. And once you achieve it, you're like, I want more, I want more. And now I've realized I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I've had all of these things and it's still not enough.
Yep.
And I'm like, so that's where I was like, what is enough? Because that's what true happiness is, in my opinion. If you had to sum it up in a sentence, it's just having enough. Like if you're in a headspace where you're like, I have enough, that could mean a million different things. You could find somebody that has a 650 square foot, apartment like what I have, and they could be like, I have enough. And you could have somebody that has a 10,000 square foot mansion that's like, I don't have enough, right? So, and somebody that makes $1 million versus someone that makes 50,000, right? Like, what is enough? And truthfully, it's whatever you feel is enough. And that's where I'm at now, is like, I've achieved those things, and all it did was make me want more and more and more, until I finally felt empty, because I was like, I can't keep achieving these high-end things. I can keep stepping into them, but they're very temporary. They don't last. These interactions, and the people that are there, they want something out of me, or they're also chasing that high. And then when it goes away, you come crashing down. I talked about this dopamine crash that I experienced, where I kept getting all these dopamine releases, doing all these wild events and flying, or going into an active volcano and flying a helicopter on a yacht, and getting, traveling the world. But it's like all of a sudden when you try to return to normal, you come crashing down, because you were up here, you're this dopamine high, and all of a sudden it gets ripped out from under you. Go back to normal life. And it's like, there's a lot of celebrities, athletes that struggle with that come down, because it's not a steady, slow come down. It's a crash. Oftentimes it's like, you look at athletes too, like they go from playing and being the superstar athlete to like having a career ending injury. And like, look at them. A lot of them suffer from depression because they can't handle like, well, what now? And like, I didn't have this steady decline. I just completely crashed from like the highest point. So it's hard to adjust to it. And then and that's where I felt that. And you make that point. It's like, you can acquire those things. But ultimately, happiness doesn't come from either of the two. Happiness comes internally from you deciding one day to wake up and go, I'm very content, grateful. I'm happy because I have enough.
Boy, that's gold right there, man. And here's the thing. So if you could give like one piece of advice to the audience, because a lot of people watching may be fans of yours, or they're business related, or they're entrepreneurs. What's one takeaway from a life crazily lived the last 30 years, the highest literally of highs and the lowest of lows? What's one piece of advice you could give to the audience that really helped change the trajectory of your life?
Man, I would say I want to say just be present. Like that's, and like how it's like, well, you gotta just live in the moment. You got to just do what you can do that's right in front of you. Today, there's so many things. If you want to learn something, go listen to a podcast right now. You want to learn how to build, I don't even care, build a house, go type in and like how to build a house, and go look at the YouTube channels, go listen to the podcast. Like just go do it, because so many of us go, I want this. And we start to project out and place these expectations of like, well, if I could like build this house, then I can end up renting it out. Then I can end up making this amount of money. And then I could buy this car. And then it's like, you think of all these exciting things to drive you, to motivate you, but then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I don't have this. And then people get upset. They're like, oh, I want this. And now it's been 3 weeks since I first had this vision and nothing has happened. And so now I'm upset. And it's like, if you just stay in the moment, and stop like looking so far ahead. I mean, you can have dreams and aspirations, but like my biggest thing that's brought the most happiness is for me to just wake up and I'm like, let me just do things to reach my goals. But like, don't look at how far away I am from them. Just focus on the fact that like, hey, yesterday I didn't do what I'm doing today. So I'm doing one more thing than I did the prior day. So I'm one step closer. And so I think a lot of us look at how far away we are from our goals, but I think we have to look at like how far we've come since we started our goals. So to me, that requires presence of mind to just be like, here I am today. And what can I do today to get better? And then when you live in the moment, in the present, you stop for thinking about the past and the future, because those are the two places where we always try to go back to and think about how we could have changed this or what we need to do in order to get here. And it's like, but the thing is we can't control those because one already happened, the other one hasn't happened, but like we can't control those moments because they haven't come yet or they already passed. So like I would say my single biggest piece of advice is do whatever it takes to be present in your life. However you can get there, there's a million different ways, but just focus on that every day. How can I be present? And you have to say that to yourself every morning. How can I be present? And then when you start slipping off in your mind, say like, come back. I'll say that in my head. I'll be like, come back. I think if you can stay present in your life, you have the best chance of being happy. That's my advice.
Boy, that's gold. Okay, here's a piece of advice for the female and male listeners. You know, I wrote a book, obviously, called How to Be Irresistible. Being in that game plan where you had so many girls like all over you for that period of time, what's one component that you think makes someone irresistible, guy or a girl?
I want to say two things. I was going to say confidence and authenticity. They go hand in hand. Because if you're confident, you just do whatever you want to do. You stop worrying about what other people think, and it's just you. And you're like, this is authentically me, and this is what I want. You'll be happier if you authentically live your life in your own way, as opposed to trying to appease others, which I did my entire life up until recently. But when you lack confidence, like, well, then someone else is going to see that and be like, well, I don't want to be with somebody that doesn't have confidence, because like I want someone that I can trust in and that I can place like that, you know, we want like a partner that can support us and be there for us. But like an unconfident individual, it's hard for them to be there for you because they're typically more in their heads and struggling. And so if they can't take care of themselves, it's really hard for a partner to want to be with somebody that's like, hey, they can't take care of themselves. How are they going to take care of me?
That's great, man. That's gold. That's gold. And where can they follow you? Where can they get to know you better? Where can they, you know, I know that you have a lot of things that you go out and do and help people. What are some of the best places that they can get to know you better?
Easiest one is just go to my Instagram. It's just my first and last name, Clayton Echard, and that's spelled Echard. But if you go there, that's where I funnel everything through my Instagram, because I'm kind of old school. I like to just have all in one. My website's linked in the bio, so that's where everything else is. But you just click on the link and it's all right there. So I keep it simple.
And then they can buy your book on Amazon, or is there a better place that they could take a look at it?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. But again, like if you go to my Instagram and you just click on the bio, it'll say my book as one of like the links. So you can click on that. It'll take you to Amazon. So you can either just search it directly or just go on my page. And that's where literally everything that I've done is linked somewhere on Instagram.
I love that. One last thing. So if you had to leave us with a quote that really resonated you throughout your life, because obviously you had some good ones in here that I know that resonated with you. What's one thing that you're like, this defines my life? This is something that really.
This one's easy. I thought about getting a tattoo of it but I don't know if I will. But everything happens for a reason, and it's one that's said that, so it can be cliche, but I don't think it's cliche when you believe in it, because I believe like everything happens, not some things. Like when you believe that statement, every single thing, that means that every single conversation, every step I take, every second of my life, I'm meant to be in that exact moment with that exact person or in that exact situation. And when you believe that, like, you start to like apply purpose to every one of those moments. There's a purpose why I'm talking to this individual at the gym that's held me up for an extra 20 minutes. Some people go, oh my gosh, I got to look at my watch. I'm 20 minutes late to my next thing. I now think everything happens for a reason. So if somebody holds me up for 20 minutes, they're not actually holding me up. I'm meant to have that conversation. And so now I'm like, I'm here trying to figure out what I'm like, why we're having this. And I've had this play out, this exact situation where somebody started talking to me in the gym. I was just about to leave the gym. Next, we talked for 30 minutes. And then somebody walked through the door. They recognized me. They came up to me and they're like, oh my gosh, you're Clayton. I was like, yeah. They're like, when did you move here? And so I started talking to them. Next thing you know, they're like, hey, I would love to like work with you. I know you're big into mental health. I run a mental health clinic. Like, I would love to have a conversation about how we can partner up. And I just remember in that moment, I was like, if I would have just been like, oh my gosh, I'm in a rush, I need to go, I'm sorry on that first conversation, I wouldn't have been there for that 20 minutes later to have this conversation. And that's now a partnership that happened, 6 or 7 months ago, that now we still interact and we still work together. So that's where I'm like, that's the power of when you believe everything happens for a reason. You stop questioning moments and you start looking for a purpose in every single one of them. And then you end up living your life with more purpose. So
no, I mean, I'll tell you, I think the last time we talked for like an hour and a half or 2 hours. I'm like, holy shit, like this is a long conversation, but it flies by because for me, probably similar to you, these conversations are my fuel. Like I just love it. I mean, I can't tell you what a dopamine rush it is to talk to someone that's lived a very unique life and to learn little nuggets of their life and takeaways of their pain and their struggle and their success. And then you kind of reconvert all that into your own mind. And you're like, whoa, this was an interesting dynamic. And you're really good at that. I mean, I could tell the moment you talk to people, people light up. So I just want to thank you for taking the time, Clayton. Really appreciate you. And I really hope most people see this and appreciate, more importantly, buy your book.
Yes, sir. Hey, thank you so much for the conversation.
Thanks, buddy. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.